Ready for the interview, and if you get a cue live on the laptop, watch what I'm gonna do. Welcome to the show, let them know we got a point of view. Hey, yo, let's have a combo. Say what you feel, be real, that's the motto. Real talk pronto, Dr. D, PhD, hit an intro. Hold up, wait, gotta be social. Network global, a home for the local. Gotta be social. Network global, a home for the local.
Is just gonna be the size it's gonna be. Look, you're freaking out over this. Look how gigantic my head is. A lot of computing power in there.
I don't want it to be Dr. D and the Eggman, you know.
Brainiac, maybe.
Yeah. Oh man, how you been?
Good, man. Just got back from Washington State, visiting with my business partner, and then we just hung out and did edibles most of the weekend. It was. And watch the Olympics. It's as good as you think
beautiful.
It was. Exactly.
You didn't boycott it because of the opening ceremony? What kind of a Christian are you?
Oh, I don't worry about stuff like that, Simon. Bigger things going on.
Oh, a sane Christian.
Yeah. I can't worry about how somebody presented something and the Last Supper or whatever. Come on.
You know, I texted you this morning and I said I'm making a lot of enemies on YouTube, and it was exactly about that. So I'm always trying to, of course, just like you, we're trying to broaden our horizons. So I want to hear voices from all kinds of things. So anyway, I am subscribed to Jewish rabbis, Orthodox Christians, liberal Christian apologists, atheists, running the gamut, and I just want to hear everybody's opinion. But this particular friar in the Orthodoxy, he's just, it was a kind of YouTube video. He wasn't overreacting himself necessarily, but he was representing those who are overreacting over this whole scenario.
Okay.
And he wasn't necessarily a voice of reason, although he wasn't a voice of like, oh no, the world's coming to an end. In Orthodoxy, they talk a lot about demons. I don't know how familiar you are with them, but at least the ones I'm acquainted with and those who represent Orthodoxy on YouTube and other resources, they talk a lot about demons. Demonology is a big part of it. So anyway, they're just saying things like, if it doesn't have the spirit of Christ, then it's the spirit of a demon. And this whole like binary attitude toward everything,
It's just so ridiculous.
So I just asked them simple questions. Where did Jesus say this? Please tell me where Jesus, I don't want to hear about anybody else.
Yeah.
Only Jesus. Where did Jesus say this? And I understand that Jesus isn't the only resource for Christian knowledge. But I think if it's something that important, that's what I always think. Okay, if it's that important, then why hasn't God, and the Bible is our, access to God's word, then why isn't it in there?
Yeah.
Why isn't being offended by art one of Jesus's talking points?
It sounds ridiculous what you just said.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine Jesus walking through an art gallery and just getting pissed off?
Can't stand this.
Yeah,
culturally inappropriate.
Yeah, instead of appreciating everybody's efforts and things like that, even those who are mocking. But let's pretend for a minute that all these Christians who are complaining are 100% correct, that what was presented was a mockery of the Last Supper and a big middle finger to Christians everywhere. Okay, let's accept that. How would Jesus react to it? Would he turn the other cheek? Would he tell us to, befriend our enemies? Would he, agree with those who spitefully use us, I think is the exact phrase in the King James anyway? Or would he say, be offended and burn down the art gallery? I mean, right. It's a weird, and boycott the Olympics. 99% of who are participating in the Olympics have nothing to do with this live performance art that you're all worked up about, but you're going to boycott the entire Olympics over it. It's such lunacy.
It's lunacy. And so you're getting, so what you're telling me is you were talking about this on YouTube or something,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
someone didn't like it, or a lot of people didn't like it.
Well, I just commented on the video, and I just,
Okay.
and I try to be friendly, but I'm also being really direct and honest,
Yeah.
and I just say, guys, this is, you know, and I think some of the verbiage I was using in my original comment, which has now turned into, of course, a back and forth
Yeah.
between myself and like 10 other individuals. But
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep it friendly, but my the point I was trying to make is that each of us only has a certain amount of time. We only have a certain amount of bandwidth, and so we should be concentrating on things that are much more important.
Right.
So the outrage here is so misplaced because I'm not seeing these same people being outraged about genocide currently occurring.
Yeah. Of course.
I don't see them taking a stand against this, that, or but just like human suffering on a global scale, that's so much more important than a piece of live performance art that will be forgotten the moment you
Oh.
stop complaining about it. And that was one of the points I made on there. It's like the moment you stop complaining about this, it will be forgotten.
Yeah. I mean, think about something like and not even just human stuff. People don't care about animals either, clearly. But like, think about the wildfires in Australia that predated
Yeah.
a lot of the pandemic and all those koalas that died. I didn't hear anybody getting upset about that in America.
Yeah.
Like, or the places that were destroyed, the outback, all this stuff. I don't hear anybody talking about when Bolsonaro, whatever that psycho's name was, he used to be the president of Brazil, was just, and may still be going, I don't know, chopping down the Amazon rainforest regularly, deforestation.
Yeah.
Where's the outrage? Where's the uproar about that? Oh, no, wait a minute. It's got to be about that someone did some artistic piece about the Last Supper that was a little bit different than what you thought it should be. Actually, a
Yeah.
lot different. And that's your hill to die on. And it's like, why though? Like,
And this is a question I asked my wife, who of course completely agrees with everything we're
yeah,
saying, but so we weren't debating this, we were just discussing it. And I asked her, I was like, are paintings by Leonardo da Vinci canon?
right.
Because to me that's a completely fictitious painting, a complete imagine a work of imagination is what I'm trying to say, by Da Vinci, about the Last Supper.
Yeah.
There's nothing sacred about it. You know what I'm saying? This is not
Oh,
some ancient, holy relic. It's a painting.
it's a painting.
I'm just I'm
Right,
just
you're baffled.
gobsmacked
You're
by it.
baffled,
Yeah,
right? You're
yeah.
baffled,
So
just like
sometimes
I am.
I like can't even. I lose the ability to think sometimes when I'm confronted with such insanity.
Yeah. It's almost like it's shocking to hear it, and you're just like, why are you wasting your time on this? Like, this is, but this
Yeah,
is goes back to, I'm gonna link it back to a previous episode we had, that there's just some level of it that it doesn't matter, because you have to have a complex hardware system on some level to be able to think about this differently. I mean, it's
yeah.
honestly, it's just a lot of basic stuff, to people. They can't they can't get past their basic hardware system. That's not a slam. It's just the reality.
No,
You know what I'm saying?
to that point, yeah, I'd mentioned an email I had to send to
Yeah.
my church's local leadership, and we decided we'd talk about it. Um, the person in question who had given a talk, he's a representative of the local leadership. There's to give everybody, because the Mormon church hierarchy, right? You have a bishop who is the leader of a congregation, a single congregation, and then you have what's called a stake presidency, who oversees a group of congregations in a specific geographical region to help them oversee and teach and preach and things like that, the stake presidency calls what are high council people. Now, these are all men, just to make sure we're painting the right picture, because in the Mormon church, women have little to no voice in leadership, which is something that I've been, of course, hammering on for 25 years or so. But anyway, and then from there, that leadership goes to, there's another level of larger regional leadership, and then it's like the top tier leadership of the entire church, which is made up of a first presidency, who there's 3 members of, and then 12 apostles, a quorum of 12 apostles. So anyway, I'm just setting the picture so that we can see that the person who gave the talk here this past Sunday, while they're kind of a low-level leadership position, regional leadership position, they're in steps not that far away from the main leadership of the church. So it is really important that these people, whoever they are speaking in a way that represents the church as a whole. It represents the current thoughts, practices, and protocols of the church. And so that is all just to set up that what this person did this last Sunday
lay it on
really betrayed all of those things. And I don't think they did it because they're a bad person. And I also want to make that extremely clear. In my letter to this person, that was also CC'd, to the rest, to the stake president, who oversees our whole region. I made that very clear. He seems like a very nice individual. And what happened is what you were just saying. He just kind of got lost in his own head.
Yeah.
There's an election coming up. He prefaced his remarks by telling us that. And of course, the moment somebody prefaces their remarks with that, they're going political. There is a document in the Mormon church that's called the Proclamation to the Family. This came back in the 90s. The main leadership of the church wrote it, signed off on it, and it's a really important document to Mormons. And it really defines what mainstream Mormonism believes about the family. It also talks about gender. It talks about Mormons' belief in a premortal existence. And in that premortal existence, we were spirit beings. Now, here's where it goes off the rails. And it's something I have a huge problem with. In that document, the Proclamation to the Family, there is the claim that our spirits had gender before we were born. So the gender we're born with in this life is a continuation of the gender our spirit had previously. Just putting that out there. Does that make sense to you?
No.
Okay. Because let me ask you this, as a medical professional, what is the purpose of gender?
I'm giving you the long pause here.
Yeah. I mean, just biologically speaking, the purpose of gender for Homo sapiens is to procreate, right?
Sure.
Were our spirits procreating? Is that how our spirits worked? Like, did our spirits have sperm and egg and were procreating in that way prior to this life? I'm just asking these questions. I mean, did we have to pee and poop as spirits? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because our genitalia is used for these different things.
Yeah.
So what would be the purpose of genitalia to a spirit before they inhabit a human body? That's my question to everybody.
Sure.
And I'm just like, what are you talking about? What?
It's a basic biological necessity to pass on your gene pool and to survive, for the species to survive. But for like spiritual cocks and stuff, I mean, what is this? I mean, like, it's like
I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who is female very recently, and the topic of within the Mormon church, females cannot hold the priesthood, therefore it cannot be in a real position of authority. And they were saying, they don't like that policy, but they don't personally want the priesthood themselves. That's not
Yeah.
something that they care about. And I said, yeah, and I completely agree with that. It's just the point. It's just
Yeah.
the point of it is that you are either given the priesthood or not given a priesthood based upon what's between your legs. That's the problem.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do
Literally.
with, yeah. you know
And only my wife was always on this. She's like, it's literally just about the flesh. What is there or what's not there. She's like, how stupid is that? I'm like,
yeah.
I know, but you're talking to another reasonable person here. That's the difference. If their whole thing is either it's a vagina or a penis, my whole thing is either you're insane or reasonable. Like I'm putting that down there. Like,
yeah.
okay, you and I could have a reasonable conversation. We can be reasonable. We can disagree with each other and go, okay. But and we can be
But we
like,
would
yeah,
hear each
we
other's
would hear
points, and
each
we would
other.
consider
We would
we would
consider it.
consider the evidence, and we would follow
Correct.
through with our own
Right.
study and things like
That's
that.
not there. And the other
Yeah.
part. This is the insane part about it is that's so stupid. Like that's it. That's the insane part. Like a bunch of people who are doing really stupid stuff and agreeing on being stupid. And then when someone rational comes in and goes, this actually makes no sense, get more stupid about it. Like,
Yeah.
that's just
It's
so
a
wild to me.
doubling down on
Double stupid.
stupidity.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like, like, oh, you think I'm stupid? I'll show you how much more stupid I am for that.
Hold my beer.
Hold my beer. I'm going to say something even crazier than what you just said. I'm just actually kind of sick of it. It's just like, I was listening to something the other day and this guy just so worked up about transgendered people and stuff. I'm like, what does this matter? I'm like, who
Yeah.
cares? I'm like, I care for the people. I'm all about, my whole motto is take care of humans. That's my simple motto. Let's just take care of the humans, right? That means all people. And just to fixate on these things. And I often think I'm probably wrong on this, but if you're that fixated on something, there's some pathology with you about that's going on. More than
Yeah.
likely, if you're really so focused on this one piece of ideology, whatever, you're dealing with some weird thing about it. It has to be. Like, no one's that I mean, I could be interested in a season long of football, whatever, and then I just forget about it.
Yeah.
No, 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 not here. It's a years long rager. I mean, like,
I'm a big basketball fan. I can't remember who won the last NBA finals.
I had to
That
think
just
about
happened
the
a
other
couple
day.
months ago.
Boston won, and my buddy was telling me, I said,
Boston
oh,
won.
yeah, who won that? I like basketball a lot.
Who were they
Like,
playing against again? Were they
the Mavericks. The
the
Mavericks.
Mavericks? That's right. The
Now, see,
Mavericks.
look, we had
Okay.
to think about that. On
See?
the other side, there's no thinking. It's spewing,
Yeah.
spewing.
But that's the thing where it's like you recognize the importance of these things. So for me, I'm not speaking for the players or the
Yeah,
diehard fans. I'm saying for me, somebody who just enjoys it, who loves the
yeah,
sport, who appreciates athletes and things like
yeah.
that, um, don't care who wins, really. It
Honestly,
is just that's
yeah.
not for me. That's not the point of being a sports fan. Who
Right.
wins? For me, it's how they win.
Yeah.
That's what's important as a sports fan. So that's for me, what we're talking about as being spiritual people, Christian
Yeah.
people, etc., or whatever your religion is. It's not what religion you are; it's how you're being that religion. I think that is what
Yeah.
Jesus is trying to say all the time. He used the Roman centurion as the example of the greatest faith he'd seen in all of Israel.
Right.
So Jesus is not concerned with the specificities of your individual belief. He's concerned with how you act
Yeah.
with what you believe.
Right. Well, that's missing completely. Just like it's like we talked about last time. I like linking back to stuff. It's so heavy on the dogma. Say somebody's like, hey, a little lighter on the cream cheese here. It's like not
A
there.
little
It's
less
like
schmear.
a little less schmear. It's like, wow, how much locks can I put on this? It's just like, it's like it's what it is. It's like heavy on the dogma. Very, very light, like AM gold light on the behavioral part, actually, aspect of it. That's what just like I'm actually kind of like so exhausted of it. I'm just like, how am I the crazy one here? For like,
So I've been talking about this with a friend of mine very recently as well. Here's something. This was actually really funny. This friend asked me just point blank, without any lead up to it. They just asked me, "Have you never cared what people think about you?"
Okay. Yeah.
And I respond to them. I say, "That's like walking up to somebody and just point blank asking them, 'Have you never cared what you look like?'" You know what I mean? It's just like, how am I supposed to take that, really?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
They meant it as a compliment. They meant it
Sure.
as, I will just speak truth to anybody.
Yeah.
And I don't care if they like me. I don't, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, I'm not in a popularity contest.
That's
I'm
right.
not,
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm not trying to make enemies either. But
Yeah.
if somebody is, so offended by truth,
Yeah.
then I mean, how good of a friend could they be in the first place?
Right. That's exactly. This is my whole thing. It's like, I just sit there sometimes and think about people just like, they're so obsessed about, you pick the topic, that is the talking cultural point, whatever. Like, this is their main agenda constantly. I'm just like, I don't know, man. I've had a lot of education, a lot of experience, and usually this is something that it is an issue for this person. Not that issue, something with them. There's an issue.
Yeah.
And they are masquerading it as, they're projecting. It's all projection. They're marketing it. I was telling my buddy over the weekend, I was like, it's all marketing. They're marketing it to you for you to come to their side, but they're really just projecting their own garbage about it and their insecurities. And, maybe they really have something underneath they feel ashamed about to talk about it. And it's okay.
Yeah.
Well, where's a different life? You could do that.
And they might not even be ashamed of the particular topic that they're
Right.
talking about, but there's something else in their life that they're overcompensating
Yeah.
for with this thing that they're uber confident about.
Right.
I'll give you an example, and I'm not trying to make any assumptions about this speaker this past Sunday,
Sure.
but he made a real strong point of saying, I know I'm a male, and I know I've always been a male, and what I want to go walk up and just say to this person, and I tried to keep my letter really concise, but so
that had to be hard for you.
It was so difficult. Oh my goodness. I gave him like 4 short paragraphs with what I thought were the 4 most important talking points of his talk that I should respond to. But even in responding to those talking points, I didn't respond in all the ways I wanted to. If I had more time, if we were doing like a lengthy debate with each other, I would love to inform this person. It's like, actually, you weren't always a male. Every single one of us started out as a female in the fetus.
Yeah.
Every single one. You later transformed into a male. You are trans.
Oh, they don't want to hear that, man. They don't want to hear that.
They do not.
That's blasphemous to them. I don't know. It's just like I think about this whole thing. Like it says, I am a male. I know I'm a male. I'm actually pretty divorced from that idea. I know that sounds probably crazy to a lot of people, but it's just not that important. I don't know. It just
You've accepted that your genitalia is not what defines you.
Yeah, it's just really not that important. Like when someone says we're gonna be more like a man, when people tell me, I go, what does that mean? Like, yeah. I actually really want to know. Is it stereotypical man, like the Barbie movie? Is this stereotypical Barbie? Is this weird Barbie? Like, what version of Barbie am I supposed to be here?
Yeah. What era of what culture?
Yeah.
Are we defining this man by?
Yeah. Yeah. Am I a 1950s man?
Yeah.
Am I 1830s man? I mean, I guess if I'm a man in 2024, that person would call me a soy boy or something, like, oh yeah, I eat soy, so that makes me bad. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
How dare you?
How dare you eat?
How dare you eat that bean? We eat pinto beans around here, my friend.
Get
that soybean out of here.
Get that soybean out of here. You're soft, you know that? I'm like, okay.
But that is time and time again, when we talk about gender, what ends up happening always is that when we start to talk about the masculine, we end up talking about what the masculine cannot do in order to be masculine. That is not how we talk about women.
No.
And we do not talk about the feminine as like, you can't do this because you're, some people will because they're chauvinist bastards.
Yeah.
But the point I'm talking about is when we're defining masculine and defining feminine, the feminine is never defined by what it can't do, because the feminine is infinite and the masculine is so stuck in this really small box.
Yeah.
And it really needs to break free. But the moment people think you're going to break free from the masculine, they think you're going to be, some crazy lunatic just wearing rainbows and not that those people are lunatic. I shouldn't even say that, because I'm not even trying to define anybody in the LGBTQ plus community as, I'm not even trying to say they're divergent in any way.
Yeah.
They're all normal people to you and I.
Sure.
They're as normal as being straight to people like you and I.
Right.
And I think that is oftentimes people mistake minority for abnormal.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I totally get it. Yeah.
It's like, you're black, you're a minority. Does that make you weird?
No. No, there are less of me in the population. That's just,
that's all. That doesn't make you weird or strange or anything like that.
Just less of me.
People
look like me.
If I go to Brazil, I'm a minority.
Right.
Does that make me weird? No. Other things do that. Okay.
I'll let that other stuff.
But simply being a minority does not make me strange or weird.
Yeah. And it's just wild to me. This is a wild ride we're on right now, man, because I feel like I'm not trying to put myself, I'm just saying I feel very sane. Like, I feel very sane. And I feel like I'm surrounded by insanity in terms of like pop culture stuff. And what's, in my life, my normal lived experience, I'm not around insane people. I'm not seeing it. I mean, but I'm also not trying to engage with a lot of nut jobs and stuff either and stuff like, but like, if what I see, the projection, the marketing to me is insane. Like, it's like, this doesn't matter. Why do you care about this so much? It's like, and that's what politics feels like. It's always this marketing plan, and religion a lot now. It's like, let's market to you the truth. Like, we know we're lying about this shit, but like, this is the truth though, with an F,
that is a real problem. And we've touched on that in the last couple episodes, just about, and I told, from my growing up Mormon perspective about, truth claims by my own church, that they've later, retconned, but they haven't fully retconned because they haven't pulled it out of the main literature, but they've made statements, on essays on their website, things like that disagree with the fundamental founding literature of the faith. So we are in a strange space right now, because more and more, as we become more educated about all of these things, and we become more tolerant and more accepting, because once it's kind of like, if I were, let's say I were racist, and you and I were talking and I had no idea you were black. And then we finally meet and I realize you're black. Well, now I have to question my racism, because here's somebody who I love and respect, and their skin color just happens to be different from mine. But, but we're in that space right now where little by little, even the most intolerant are becoming more tolerant.
Yeah.
And they don't even realize it.
Right.
They might think they're being corrupted.
That's the word. You've been corrupted by the deep state and all this stuff. I'm like, wasn't this like, I've seen stuff like this in movies, like where some guy said this. I'm like, you guys just playing movies and stuff? Like, what is this? Like, I don't know. I just like an attack on sanity in my opinion. Like,
the conspiracy theories out there, and I'm not hip to every conspiracy theory, but I would say at least 90% of the conspiracy theories that I get wind of are from the far right.
Yeah.
Um,
But they won't say that. You know what I mean? Like there's no acknowledgement of that.
yeah,
No, on that aspect, as people who observe both sides, they think people on the left are also doing that, or they think it's worse. Like they're saying all these things. It's like it's just this massive cognitive dissonance going on, you know.
my wife was having a debate with some people very recently about the moon landing.
Oh
and they
gosh.
and they wanted to
Oh
push the
wow.
conspiracy theory that it didn't happen. It was all on Hollywood set. And I was like, well, how do you explain that we've been to the moon several times and we bring back moon rocks and we do all
Yeah.
these things? It's like, how did we bring back moon rocks
Yeah.
if we weren't there? I don't understand.
Yeah.
But one of these people, their argument was, it's not bad to push back. It's like, no, it's not bad to push back,
No.
but you should have something of substance to push back with. If you're just
Yeah.
pushing back because you heard somebody else say, oh, that didn't happen,
Yeah.
but they have no substantive claim for which you can get behind, then why are you making it your argument? Why are you standing behind it? And their argument is like, well, you just shouldn't trust the government. Like,
Okay. This is a good segue into this. This is very similar to um when someone tries to end your discussion with them about the Bible. Right? The end you know what's coming. If you dig
no.
too deep and you provide actual sane points of view, the end is always, well, this is what the Bible says. It's or there's mystery. It's a mystery. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's the same garbage stuff to just get out of it for that. Like, don't tell me that. Like, be strong with your point. Be strong. Back it up with something. Don't just tell me I'm a, do it because I said so. All right. Yeah, good parenting. It's like it's
So
crazy to
at a
me.
certain point, you build trust. And at a certain point, somebody might just take your word on it. But that is something that you build
You build
by,
that.
yes, by having a history of presenting accurate claims with evidence.
Right.
It's not something that you just get to, oh, well, you know,
Yeah.
you have no reason to trust me, but trust me.
Trust me.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Trust me. This is what God wants. This is what Jesus thinks. I
It's
mean,
just
that's what
like
people try to
too.
tell me all the time.
I'm telling you, I don't, like I said, I don't engage much with, we're different. You're doing more of that than I am. But in the instance that does happen, someone will say, well, life was just better under Trump. What does that mean? I say, like, tell me
For
what was
who?
better for like which people, what were the policies, what actually helped people in their day. It's just nothing. It's almost a pointless exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there weren't all these people coming across the border. It's always the same bullshit. There's all these people
Like,
coming
actually,
across the
they
border.
were.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, and they've been doing it for a long time. I'm like, whoever you want to say it is, it's been happening. All right, and it's like it's the same stuff. Our
I
freedoms
was,
weren't infringed upon. Uh,
what freedom? Normally, what they're talking about is that somebody else gained more freedom, as in not more freedom than them, mind you, but they
yeah,
became close to being more equal.
yeah,
And somebody else, a minority,
a minority. Yeah,
no, usually is what we're talking about, whether they be a racial minority or a gender or sexual
yeah,
minority. What these people are talking about is that somebody else is getting pretty close to having
yeah,
as many rights as I have, and that can't happen.
yeah.
I've got to stay in
I've
power.
got to stay in power. Or as oh, life was so much better. You know what? This is my next line. Sometimes somebody says that to me. My life is always better when I make better decisions. I don't depend on people in this place or that place to make my life better. I make my life better and I make better decisions by that. Basically, you've leased out your life to someone else. Well, my
Yeah,
life is only better if so and so is in the leadership position and taking no responsibility that maybe your life's shit because you're a piece of shit. like that. That's too much responsibility. That's too much.
Don't be subtle. Tell me what you really
Yeah,
mean.
it's true though. I'm telling you, it's like, because they're not gonna. Okay, here's I'm on a thing today, man. You got me going, man.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, that's just like you are literally leasing. You're giving away your life to other people and saying, you know what, this was this way when this person was in. The price of eggs was less, and blah blah blah. Okay, what about them trips to Vegas you went to when you spent $3,000-4,000? Inflation?
Mm-hmm.
Did you curb any of your behavior during the time?
Yeah.
Well, it's my right to spend money, and it's your right to be broke as hell too, and stop complaining about other people. Like, don't be putting that on. You know, it's your life, and there's obviously people are born into different situations. As a minority, I understand that minorities have a lot, and people who are just born into poverty. That's a little different. All right. That's just a lot different for that. But listen, you didn't need to take that $5,000 vacation and during inflation and then blame it on inflation or the president. Meanwhile, did you have to buy a new car during this time? No. You could have cut back. Oh, here's another one. You could have gone out to eat at a restaurant, and maybe you and your significant other could just split a large ass entree that they give you instead of getting separate ones. Can I keep going? I mean, like, no, but life was better because it's too hard for me to have self-reflection about the garbage I did to cause my life to not be well. No one wants to do that.
In reflecting upon these kinds of things, my wife and I were talking about this, and in the past couple of years, we're making more money and we're living more comfortably than we ever have in our entire marriage. We've been married. We just celebrated 24 years, you know, so we've been married a long time, but we are no happier than we were when we were destitute. You know, no happier at all. When we were students on food stamps, you know, we no happier today than we were then. In fact, this past year, my wife and I agree, has been one of the most difficult emotional years of our marriage. And it has nothing to do with like our marriage is falling apart or anything like that. It would just, shit happens. You know, people change and progress. And we had some growing pains this year. And, you know, we still love each other very much, of course. And we're just great and we're doing fine. But you just go through these times, you know, and you don't blame, you know, we didn't go through a tough time because of the Biden administration. You know what I'm saying?
But that's what it is, right? That's the whole talking point. My life sucks because of the Biden administration or Clinton's or Bush. Really?
Yeah. I mean,
really, was George W. right next to you when you bought that fucking fur coat that you didn't need?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, I'm serious. I'm sick of people. I'm sick of lack of personal accountability. This isn't like, oh, pick yourself up, bootstraps. That's garbage. When people are born into rough situations. Some people overcome it. Some people don't. This is like stuff you literally have agency over. Like, just because you wanted to get a brand new couch and you didn't need it, you just did it. And then, oh, you know, inflation's really high right now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you had a choice.
You know, what we're talking about is really funny because it's materialism, right?
Yeah.
And the same people who are probably more than likely making these talking points are all supposed to be Christian.
Yeah.
Anti-materialists. So they should know that money is the root of all evil, and their concern with money is not a concern that Jesus had. No. You know, in fact, he would tell you to give everything you have away to the poor.
That's right.
And to take that vow of that Franciscan vow of poverty and to follow him. That's what Jesus would respond to anybody complaining about their financial situation. You know,
have less. How about this? Have less. Or, you know what? Here's another one. I'm sorry, I'm on a rant here today, man.
Go it.
Like,
please.
You're complaining about the price of gas. Yeah, you're driving the biggest F-250 known to man that gets like 10 miles to the. Is that smart?
Yeah.
Is that smart? Like, I guess you can't. I guess it's You just don't want to look stupid having a soy boy Prius or something, something, or whatever, a
we
hybrid
own
car.
we own 3 cars, a Chevy Spark and 2 Priuses.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, there is nothing that gives me more joy than to average 55 miles to the gallon in my
Exactly.
Prius, while that douchebag that you're talking about next to me is averaging 12.
Right. But then they complain the price under the Biden administration gas. I'm like, again, personal accountability. Do you need that big ass truck? All right. There are plenty of other options where you can get 55 miles to the gallon or hybrid or electric. But it's, again, you just lease your decision making. My wife says it. You've leased your decision making to other people. That's what
Yeah.
you've given your own agency away by saying, well, under this administration, my life was good. Really, your life is good. You're out of shape, you're broke, and you're going to Trump rallies. Your life was better then? It's like
Yeah.
your life was better. How? Tell me the metrics that your life was better about. Just tell me. Like,
They felt more at ease thinking that they were in power.
yeah,
They had this imagination that somehow they were in power. You know what I
right.
mean? Like if your team's winning, you think
Yeah,
we all have had this, but some of us have grown out of it, but we've all had
yeah,
this where we feel like if our team is winning, whether it be a political team, sports team, religious team, whatever have
yeah,
you, if we're winning, then we have power and that we feel empowered.
yeah.
The thing about somebody like a Donald Trump is that he's not interested in empowering anybody else.
No.
That's the problem with somebody like a Donald Trump, is that he's not trying to lift everybody up with him.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to make an argument for the other side that they are.
No.
I'm just trying to say that, to make your point that if you are depending on, no matter what, who you're voting for, if
Yeah.
you're depending on them to empower you, forget about it.
Forget it. Like,
I'm not looking to Kamala Harris to empower me.
no.
No, it's just
You're
not going to
literally
happen.
looking for the president of the United States and that person's administration to make your life worth it. Like, this is, I mean, you might as well just drop your pants and just be like, hey, I have no agency over my life. I literally have no decision-making power. Imagine the CEO of a really successful company like, we just have to make these decisions based off of this nebulous thing out here in another galaxy, and then everyone will be happy. And like, oh, maybe we should do something about it. Like, sick of it, man. I'm like, yeah, I see life so clearly now, man. I'm just like, I figured it out. I just like, it's just practical. So that same person with the truck would go, oh, well, that's my freedom to have that truck. You're correct. That is true. It's still a stupid decision. Like,
Yeah, freedom isn't void of consequence. That's the thing. Like when we say we're free to do something, that doesn't mean it's without consequence. Yeah, you're actually free to break any law you want,
yeah, I mean, go
but
for it. Yeah,
those bring consequences,
that's
right?
right.
And you're free to do things that are perfectly lawful that also have negative
It's true.
consequences. So
It's like,
freedom is not a get out of jail free card.
no, I'm sick of this freedom discussion, man, with people. I'm just like, come on, give me a break. I'm like, you're masking your stupid decision based on freedom. Freedom's the cover. Your stupidity is the reason. Like, that's what it is. Like,
Yeah.
no one wants to admit that, though. This is the crux of my whole thing, Simon, is I told this I think I told this to my wife. I said, self-reflection is a higher order of thinking in today's society. It's a much higher level of cognitive brain power at this point. And like thinking about it, reflecting, and then doing something, that's superhuman. That's superhuman. That's a Marvel superhero right there. The baseline is not that. The baseline is denial. That's what the baseline is. I will deny that I had anything wrong to do with the outcome of my life and his decision, and I will pawn it off to someone else because it hurts too much to actually confront me. It's much easier to, and it's the same thing. Oh, the food administration, the stuff they put in our food, I get that. A lot of bad stuff. I mean, did you change your habits? I mean, come on. At least lie to me a little. Lie to me a little bit in a good way.
Yeah.
Give me something, like.
So there's the Mr. Rogers song. What do you do with the mad that you feel?
Yeah.
And he gives some options. He's like, hey, do you run as fast as you can go? Do you punch some Play-Doh? Do you, whatever. But toward the end of the song, he starts singing about how wonderful it is to be able to stop when you want to.
Yeah.
So you can have these outlets for the mad that you feel, but you're still in control of yourself. So instead of punching a person, you punch that Play-Doh.
Yeah.
Instead of running somebody down, you just run as fast as you can by yourself, So anyway, the whole point of this is that it's just such a beautiful concept to me, to just be able to say, okay, we all feel. That was one of Mr. Rogers' biggest talking points, is that how you feel is who you are. And yet what he communicates in this song is that higher thinking can prevail over those baser feelings. And I'm not trying to use base as in derogative, but how you feel really is the most base communication that we have.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I feel a certain way. How you feel has nothing to do with the truth. You can feel something that is completely inaccurate to what's actually going on.
Right. That's right.
All of us are guilty of this.
Every one of us.
I might be offended by something that somebody said, but I might have heard what they said completely out of context. And now my feelings are completely invalid.
Yeah.
This is where higher thinking comes in, what we're talking about. Okay, you feel something. Start there. Now examine the feeling. Why did you feel that way? What's happening to cause these feelings to come up? Is there a history in your own self that, that something happened that's triggering these feelings? And it's actually not the thing that happened, but something that happened in the past that, you're actually feeling about, so on and so forth. It's all individual, and it depends on the situation and the person. But it is so important for all of us to follow Mr. Rogers' instructions and to stop. Okay, you're feeling, you have a safe outlet for those feelings, and now you stop and you control yourself.
Yeah. That's hard to do for a lot of folks. So speaking of that higher order thinking, I sent you that podcast episode. It was I love this thing, the Bible for Normal People. I love this podcast.
That was a great episode. It was good.
Right. David Dark. I'd never heard of the guy before this. And I thought, man, this guy says a lot of interesting things. Like you say a lot of interesting things. And David, he channels, you guys are very similar to me. And I just
felt that like that when I was listening to it.
Yeah, like this guy is like, this is my type of guy. It's like this doubt as a holy task. I read that and I was like, ooh, talk dirty.
Yeah.
Ooh, baby. And just how he broke it down. So, I mean, I listened to it, but I sent it to you because I figured you would like it, or you'd be at least interested in it, because those are two different things. Yeah. And I want your reaction to it.
So I loved it, and I was interested in it.
Okay.
And it's something that I've had a lot of conversations with, this concept of doubt with people, especially people of my own faith and other Christian believers. And I won't say that I talk about it the same way that they did in the podcast. They came at it from some different angles, which I really appreciated. But I'll give you the angle that I'm normally coming at it from, and that is James, the Apostle James says, faith without works is dead. And I would add to that and say faith without doubt is dead. Because faith is not knowledge. And that's something that they were really kind of getting at and talking to, talking to the point of, is that doubt is when you just don't know something. It's like, there's no way that I can prove in the court of law that God even exists. I can't do it. There's no tangible claim that I can use to prove the existence of God. That does not mean you have to stop believing in God, that your faith is invalid, but it does mean that there's room for doubt within that faith. And where there's room for doubt, there's room for growth. There's room for us to expand our knowledge. So whatever you have faith in, whatever any of us has faith in, we have room to grow and change within that faith, because that faith is not based on inarguable claims.
Right.
That's my brief take on it.
That is the briefest take I've ever seen you give on anything. But if I said, let's talk about the prequel Star Wars, you would lose your mind.
I just
on this 25 minutes soliloquy about it.
Well, I mean, I can keep going if you want.
I called you out on that one, man.
Yeah.
That was the lightest take I've ever seen you give.
Well, because I agreed with them.
It's right. When Simon agrees,
I mean,
there's not much to say.
There's not much to say when you agree with somebody.
That's kind of true, actually.
I mean, that's why I prefer conversations with people where at least we have a different take on something, because otherwise, if we're all coming from the same place and the same knowledge base and we agree, I mean, there's no conversation anymore.
You had nothing on that, man.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute. I know that feeling when someone's wrapping up their talk and the volume gets lower.
Yeah.
Now they're coming in to land the plane. I'm like, whoa, wait.
That's all
really
he's got.
happening?
That's all he's got to
That's
say.
really happening.
Yeah.
Like,
So, all right, let me talk a little bit about faith real quick, because if doubt is such an important component of faith, then maybe we need to talk about what is faith. And I've had a long journey with defining for myself what faith is. If you were to ask me, probably when I'm a teenager, what is faith? I would give you the standard answer that is like how Mormons specifically define faith, and that is kind of going along with the Apostle Paul. It's the belief in things that are unseen but are true. How you prove something unseen is true, I don't know. I don't know. Do you smell it? It smells true to me. But that's how I would have responded. Now, then I went on my mission in Brazil, and while on that mission, I came to what I thought was like this amazing revelation about what faith is. And I came to realize that faith is an experience. So each person's faith is based on their own personal experience with the divine. Okay, now I have to skip ahead a bunch more years, and I realized that I was wrong. And I'm contemplating once again the Apostle James and his faith without works is dead. And I came to, and this is the version of faith that I still subscribe to today, that faith is the work, and it has nothing to do with the result. So when you put your faith in something, and we're talking about God. So I put my faith in God. That means I'm going to act. I'm going to do things that demonstrate my faith, because that is my faith. So anytime you pray, anytime you give service to somebody, that is the expression of faith. But here's the example I use to other Mormons, because the Mormon religion is founded upon the prophet Joseph Smith going out to a grove and praying and asking God which church he should join. That was his initial question. And he has this vision. God and Jesus appeared to him, and they tell him not to join any church, but to start the Mormon church, right? But here's the question I ask people. If God and Jesus had never shown up that day, did that mean Joseph didn't have faith? And my answer is no, because the result has nothing to do with the process. Joseph Smith showed his faith just by going and kneeling and praying. That was his faith. The response is completely divorced from it.
Yeah.
I don't know if all that made sense, but that's
does
where I'm
make
at with
sense.
faith.
No.
That's where I'm at with faith.
It's evolving. It's evolved over time
Yeah.
for you. And same with me, man. I feel like certainly okay, so maybe there's some listeners who are like, okay, I understand that. Maybe give me an example of something outside of religion. Like, all right, everybody says the word faith. Like I have faith that my team is going to become a better team. What does that mean? That means you have faith in the process of that team becoming better. The decisions they make, the moves, the transactions, the type of players they'll put on the team and stuff. You have faith in the organization, right? If you don't have any faith in your organization, that means you really think that nothing's going to happen. Like, you know.
Yeah, and that faith is you know, it could be completely misplaced. I don't want to say misplaced. What's the word I want? Anyway, don't worry about that. But the point is that what if your players get injured? Right. You have no control over these things.
Yeah.
So should you have never had faith in the first place? You know, I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's
You're
like
still in it no matter what. You still believe in the, you know, some things are out of your control, obviously, you know.
But those things that are out of your control is what I think they were talking about in this podcast as doubt.
Yeah.
And doubt doesn't mean necessarily that you say, "Oh, I don't believe."
Yeah.
It means there's room for error. Yeah. I believe such and such team is going to go win the championship.
Yeah.
Well, would the Celtics have won the championship if their three top players, right, Brown and Tatum and Porzingis, whoever, Porzingis, if they all went down with career-ending injuries, did they win the title? You know, it's just, you know, so you can have as much faith as you want, but there's always room for error within that faith.
Yeah, it's great, and I think I could be reading this completely wrong. It's okay. But I think what happens are traditional ideas of doubt in relation to faith is if you have any level of doubt, you are now moving towards not believing, or the devil's got a hold of you. You know, it's all this like fear mongering. You know, it's all of a sudden you've turned to fear, and now you're on the road to not being a part of this thing. And I think what we're trying to do is like, no. Why does that have to equal that? Like for that, you know?
So it does equal that only because the more zealous people who believe what you're saying just now, that it must equal that, they're pushing the rest of us out with their zealousness, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm trying not to be over dramatic about any of this because I honestly don't have like these terrible, you know, emotional feelings about these types of things.
Yeah.
But the Mormon Church has more or less pushed me out.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I didn't choose to learn too much truth. It just happened. But by learning too much truth, I'm now in a position where I cannot participate in a lot of the things.
Yeah.
And I've been pushed out because I decided to study.
Yeah. You know what's great? And, you know, on top of that, something I think that's good to mention again. And I've used this when you've said this, you know, during the whole thing, like when you're talking about Bible study. And then when you ask questions, I'm going to say push back, you're just asking questions. Mm-hmm. And this is frowned upon. And not just these settings, in a lot of settings. You know, if you're in a business meeting and you say things that's very counterculture to the business, it's like this is blasphemous. It's like, well, I thought this was a study. Like, when you study, you ask questions. Like, I never forgot that when you said that. That's brilliant. Like, that's the greatest answer, like, thing to explain. Don't we ask questions when we study? Like,
how dare you?
How dare you have a brain?
How dare you be so presumptuous as to question the claims I'm making?
Yes.
You know, I mean,
You question my how, and you know what they want to tell you? How dare you question my ego? You're trying to
Oh,
take a hit at my ego right
that
now.
is it, that is it right there. And I think I've been extremely humbled through study, because
Right.
when you really start digging in, you realize how much you don't know.
Yeah.
The less you know, the more you don't realize you don't know. Does that make sense?
And the less you know, the more you think you know.
Exactly.
Like,
That is exactly kind of what I'm getting
yeah.
at. Yeah. Where it's just like the less you know, the more sure you are that you're right. But the
Yep.
more you know, the more you're like, there's a lot of
Mm,
nuance here. And there's
yeah.
there's so much room for error that, I mean, one of these discussions I was having with these people about the Olympic thing was just like, it's just art, and art borrows. There's an exchange always going on. The earliest depictions of Jesus were completely like based on Greek mythology. And still
Yeah.
today, we uphold a lot of these uh, like Greek representations of
Yeah.
Jesus, because like what became the bearded powerful Jesus was kind of a representation of Jupiter. It has nothing to do with what Jesus actually
Yeah.
looked like, this
Yeah.
tall, lean, bearded, long-haired guy.
Yeah.
He doesn't actually look like what a Jew would look like.
Yeah.
Paul himself said, hey, keep your hair short.
Yeah.
So I mean, the Jewish style at the time was not what we depict Jesus as,
No.
in our art today. And the earliest depictions of Jesus, I think we've talked about this before, he was a young guy with curly locks of blonde hair,
Yeah.
no beard. He had a staff to do his miracles with.
Yeah.
Those were the earliest artistic depictions of Jesus that we have. So if you want to go by earliest, those must be the most accurate. So every depiction that you see of Jesus with the beard and all these kind of things must be completely inaccurate, because the earliest
Yeah.
ones, the predate. So anyway, but my point with all that was just to say, we just borrow art all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Everybody's influenced by something else. Sometimes you're doing an homage, sometimes you're doing a parody,
Yeah.
sometimes what have you. But to get all upset about it is just to show how ignorant and how little you know
That's right.
about art and the exchange of culture that's always happening. That people want to pretend Christianity just appeared in a vacuum and that it was never influenced by anything else around it. And it's the most ludicrous thing I've ever
Totally.
heard. So it's like this one culture you think never was influenced by any other culture
Yeah.
in its entire history.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to be so blunt, but that's just stupid.
It's just stupid. It's like no artist as a musician yourself, like, oh, well, no one ever influenced me ever.
Oh
I
gosh,
never
yeah.
really listened to anything that moved me, and I
Yeah.
just an original, you
Yeah,
know. I
exactly.
mean, ask Hollywood. All they do is repurpose stuff from, it's like,
No.
I mean, what is it? Come on.
Everything's a remake,
Yeah, it's all
and
exactly.
and and that's a perfect analog. The Hollywood analog too. I mean, if you go down to it, let's just use the Pauline epistles for an example.
Yeah.
Well, we think at least probably six of them are forgeries,
Yeah. Yeah.
but they're trying to copy Paul and use his name in order to get their letter accepted as truth. And that's what Hollywood does, right? I mean, we
Yeah,
got
of
like this
course.
new Twisters movie coming
Oh
out,
my God.
we got another Alien movie coming out,
Yeah, yeah.
there's just always another thing. My kids were asking, it's like, you gonna go see the new Alien movie? It's like, I don't know.
Probably not for me, honestly. I'll wait till it gets
Is there really are they really going to do anything that adds to the conversation?
No. I don't even know that for sure, but my guess is zero, no, at all.
From the preview, it looks like a rehash of
Yeah,
kind of the original Alien movie.
yeah,
And whether you like the movies like Prometheus and what was the one that came
yeah.
after it,
Alien Covenant and
yeah, whether you like those movies or not, whether or not you think they're too problematic to enjoy because of maybe they didn't wear helmets when they went on to the new planet or
Sure.
whatever.
Yeah.
If you think those are, elements that make them too problematic, or you just didn't like the movies, at least what he was doing was trying to expand the conversation
Yeah.
in a way that none of the other Alien movies
Right.
had.
Exactly. Yeah. Where do we come from? What's the creation? It's kind of a creation story.
Yeah.
The Prometheus covenant for that. How it's done, obviously up for debate, but it's, it's an expansion of an idea for that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we just don't see that very much. I told you I went and saw that Deadpool
Oh
Wolverine
yeah. You
movie.
have to tell me how that is.
So, my big complaint with it is, once again, it doesn't expand the conversation. Any conversation you're having about these like multiverse movies or anything like that, or if you're just a big Marvel fan,
Yeah.
or whatever, this movie did nothing to move anything forward. And if you've already watched something like Everything Everywhere All at Once,
Yeah.
then you've already seen the apex of multiverse movies.
Yeah. Of course.
The action's better, it's funnier, it's more moving, the story's better. Everything about it is 100% superior to this Deadpool Wolverine movie. Does that make Deadpool Wolverine a bad movie? No, it doesn't. I enjoyed myself. It was fine. It just didn't add anything.
Yeah.
And so the question for me is always, what's his excuse for existing?
Yeah.
I mean, is it just to entertain me? Is it just to make me giggle like 3 times in 2.5 hours? Because
Two
that's
and a half
about what happened.
hours.
It's something like that. I can't
Jeez,
remember, but
man.
it's like 2 hours plus or something like that.
Oof.
And other people loved it.
Yeah.
So I'm just speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for anybody else. I took my son Phineas, and he and his friends loved it. They thought it was hilarious. Phineas was asking me how I'd rate it. I told him probably 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
And at first he was offended by that.
That's
It's
pretty
like,
high for you, I feel like. I mean,
I felt like it was too. Because while it wasn't, like I say, it wasn't like moving any conversation forward in any way, shape, or form. It also didn't necessarily offend my intelligence. Like, it
yeah.
just presented itself as, this is a dumb movie, and we're
Yeah.
doing dumb things, and we're just here to make fun of everybody,
Yeah.
including ourselves. And it played to me like a really high budget SNL skit.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what it played to me as.
Yeah.
And that might be doing it a disservice, and I don't want to do it a disservice. Lots of people just love this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of people thought it was one of the funniest things they'd ever seen. It it didn't hit me that way.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. That's, of course. Yeah. It's just difference of how people view things,
Yeah. If it was on and I wasn't doing anything else, would I sit and watch it? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. But I wouldn't be like, oh, what's that on? I wouldn't be offended by it. So I'm not offended by its existence, but I also can't make a good argument for it existing at all. Does that make sense?
There goes Simon. There he goes.
But other movies, they have this real reason to exist. And I felt like Marvel, for a long time, made movies that had specific reasons for existing. And I really feel like, as they've expanded and they're doing all these different series, and it's the same thing with these other Disney properties now. It's the same thing with the Star Wars properties. I can't think of a single reason for any of these properties to have been made. I honestly can't.
Feel the same way, man.
Other than Baby Yoda, that's like the only thing I can think of. That's like, if you want to sell a bunch of plush toys that are all Baby Yoda, that's like the only thing I can think of for these things to exist. The storylines aren't very interesting, if at all interesting. I don't see a lot of growth in the characters. It's just, what am I here for?
It just appeals to the basics of people. I mean, it's just like,
Yeah.
and a lot of people don't want to think when like I have clients like that who like they hate movies that are like have a lot of complex aspects to them, or
Yeah.
more cerebral. They'll tell me straight up, I just want stuff to blow up during the movie. Like I don't want to think like
Yeah.
me, I understand that. I like that too. But like it can't
Yeah.
be everything for me. Honestly, it just can't be everything. Like even when I watched John Wick 4, I was like I mean the whole movie is just a fight scene. I
Yeah.
was like and it just started feeling so ridiculous at one point when they were going up the stairs at the end and you're just falling down. It's like,
Mm.
this was literally made for the least amount of attention span possible. I was,
Yeah. I enjoyed the first John Wick. I think I kind of enjoyed the second one. And then I just kind of done. I was like, well,
yeah,
I feel like I've
it fell
seen
apart
this.
after that, man. Yeah, you've
Yeah.
seen
And
it.
I'm,
It's like, oh, I've
yeah.
seen this, you know.
And I'm not saying like they're bad movies, and the effort that
Yeah,
goes into all that fight choreography and all the things, the
sure.
stunts
No,
and everything, it's
great.
so impressive. I'm not saying I'm not here to bash it. I'm just saying I've lost interest in the storyline.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
without interest in the storyline, then what are we here for?
They
What
lost
are we
interest in
here?
the storyline too, Simon. No
Well,
story? No, let's blow stuff up. Like,
and I think that's just the danger of trying to just make all these sequels. You know, it's
yeah,
just like
yeah,
just do a different original property. You
yeah,
know, I mean, it's not impossible. John Wick, the first one,
yeah.
was not based on a different movie that came before it. It is possible to make an original movie with an original character and have it be very successful. It's very possible. We see it happen all the time. So I'm just befuddled why these big movie thing, you know, houses or whatever, they feel like they have to just rehash the same thing over and over. And to Marvel's credit, it feels like they're waking up to it.
Yeah, I hope so. I really do.
Um,
There's a lot of it's been trash lately, man.
I just stopped watching. I
Yeah.
haven't watched any of the latest movies
I haven't
or
remembered the
series.
last one. I just saw, I mean, I was like, eh,
I think the last movie I actually watched was the Spider-Man one.
okay.
Anyway, I don't even remember how many years ago that was, but
We're so disinterested in it. We're like,
I know we're just
you know,
there's just so many better things out there.
yeah.
And I'm not trying to trash the Marvel movies. I think they've made some really great
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
So when Phineas was asking me to defend my position, giving it a 7 out of 10, I said, well, let's only pit it against other Marvel movies.
Hmm.
And I was like, and let's make a list of all the ones that are better.
Yeah.
And we started making that list. And before you know it, Phineas is like, yeah, I guess for me, it's an 8 out of 10, you know, which I think he might have been on the verge of saying like 9 or 10 out of
Yeah.
10 for
Okay.
him. But once we started actually having the discussion, so
Yeah.
this goes to your point. Phineas was pretty zealous about Deadpool Wolverine being this great movie, but he had the ability to listen to a logical argument about why I didn't think it lived up to the
Yeah.
quality of certain other movies. Therefore, I didn't give it a low rating, but I'm not going to give it the highest marks
Yeah.
either. It's above mediocre and it's below excellent. You know?
Yeah. Because you went to like, you started doing the Rolodex. You're like, all right, if I'm going to base this against other Marvel movies, all of a sudden you start thinking, okay, Captain America Civil War, like
Yeah,
not as
Winter
good as that.
Soldier.
Winners, you're not as good as that. You know, it's like
To me, those are
those are peak.
the Russo brothers are peak Marvel,
Yeah,
you
and they're
know.
coming back.
So
You know that the next
yeah, I
two.
heard
Yeah, I
that.
saw that. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, they're trying to save the ship. Yeah,
Same
it's
with
like,
what's his name? He was Iron Man. Now he's
oh,
going to be
Tony
the new
Stark's gonna be
villain.
Doctor Doom or whatever. Or
Yeah.
what? Yeah, I'm like,
And I was like, you know what? I can actually be okay with that because Iron
yeah,
Man was as he was portrayed in those Marvel series of
yeah,
movies, he was kind of Doctor Doom with
yeah,
good and with better intentions
right.
and with better people around him to influence him.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
Yeah. The thing about the Doctor Doom character is oftentimes he actually has really benevolent
Right.
In the comic books, he oftentimes said, but the problem with the Doctor Doom character is his ego. So he thinks he's right, and he doesn't allow for the nuance that other people could be right or more correct than he is. So he seeks power, but he thinks by him gaining all the power that he's going to make everything wonderful. So that's kind of like the Doctor Doom, modus operandi there. And it's his motivation behind a lot of what he does in the comics. I talk like I've been keeping up with comics over the last
you really
30 years.
do, man.
I have not. I have not. But from the little I have, and from the little I know of comics pre 2000s, because that's when I was into comics, was like really in the 90s. That's when I was really big into them. And when I say really big into them, I mean, I have my entire comic book collection. I still have it.
Yeah.
And it's a stack of comics about this high.
Yeah.
It's
so
not
really
it's not a ton of comics, But I used to really love the characters, and I would have a lot of conversations with other people who are into it, things like that. And so while these characters don't necessarily interest me the way they did, of course, when I was younger, I still have a lot of nostalgia for them. And so I appreciate them when they're portrayed well on screen. I appreciate it when I pay $15 to $20 for a movie ticket and somebody has done their due diligence and really done a wonderful job of bringing a character to the screen. That was one of the things I just loved about those Captain America movies. I felt like of all the characters, I really felt like they really did a great job with that Captain America guy. I mean,
man, they really did, man. I mean, great, perfect casting too, with Chris Evans, the storyline, the kind of the old school values, and then being thrust into this new world, and love and life and friendship. Like, oh, amazing, and good fighting scenes too. I mean, like,
exactly, excellent action, wonderful jokes and conversations. Sometimes I love. I think it's the first Avengers movie where I think Thor had just come into it or something. Anyway, somebody warns Captain America. He's like, "You're out of your league, man. These guys are basically gods." And in his old timey 1940s perfect way, he said, "There's only one God, ma'am." And then he leapt out to join the fracas, And I just love that because the thing about a character like Captain America is that you don't need to agree with him to love him.
That's
You don't need to be an American or a Christian or any of those things to love him, because his character in these films is exactly what America promises to be.
Exactly.
But breaks that promise constantly.
Regularly.
And it's to represent everyone, to protect and defend everyone. It doesn't matter what you believe, where you're from. What matters is that you're a human being and America's here to help. That's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah. And not being done very well at this point. It's an hour by hour breaking of the rules.
I try not to be cynical, I try to say, and with these conversations with these particularly Orthodox Christians on this YouTube thing that we were talking about, I was pointing this out time after time because they want to talk about like things as being signs of the time. Okay. Well, starting with Paul, for the last 2,000 years, we've been talking about signs of the time.
Yeah.
The time ain't come yet. So, but the point I was trying to make to these people is like, you're talking about signs of the time as if it's so bad right now. And we're living in the most privileged, especially if you're an American citizen, or actually, I think some of these people were from across the pond over in Great Britain, but equally for them too. No better time in the history of the world for you to live.
Agreed. This is the most charmed existence for humans at this point in time. Like, you want to go back and, be pioneers, go across all of the United States and get dysentery and die? you know, or like have to, and heaven forbid you have
Which
to
I
actually
did many
make them.
times
You
growing up
did, yeah,
on
yeah.
Oregon Trail.
Yeah,
On Oregon Trail,
exactly.
I
Exactly.
did
I played that
so
too.
many times. Died of
Yeah.
dysentery.
Just
No, it
just
was
dysentery,
terrible.
basic stuff that now you would laugh at if someone like got him like, really? And like you
Those were
actually
some
have
of
to
the
cook
things.
every day,
Yeah,
you know,
those are
like
some of the things I listed. I said, we live in an age of, I asked them, it's like, what time are you talking about? Because they're
yeah,
like, in these times we're in. I was like, are
yeah.
you talking about the time of high-speed travel, holding a supercomputer in the palm of your hand with which you can video call somebody on the opposite side of the globe at the push of a button? You just video call them. I mean, that's witchcraft. That's,
Basically.
I
I mean, you
mean,
know how magical that feels?
yeah. And yeah, with all of these amazing advancements, there comes a cost. There's always a cost. And yes, so some things you can say maybe have gotten worse while other things have gotten better. But
Sure.
by and large, once again, this goes back to the conversation of it's not, it's how you use it. It's how you use it. It's how you view it. So if you were to watch those Olympic Games and just say, oh, well, I didn't really enjoy that. Okay, fine.
Okay, exactly. Just deadpan. It'd be like, and
Yeah.
is this
Okay.
the word of the day? I mean,
Now let's watch these amazing athletes.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
but it's your right to not like something, and it's
that's
totally
right.
fine. And you can use your feelings and however you want to in that regard. But then you do what Mr. Rogers told you and you stop,
Yeah,
you count all your blessings, you think about how amazing all of these athletes are, how much they've dedicated their life to this
yeah,
excellence that the rest of us will never achieve in any aspect of our life. We will never be as good as these gold medalists or silver or bronze medalists, or even the
yeah. Of
person who came in last place. We will
course.
never be that good at anything in our life as they are at that one thing. And if you're not willing to celebrate that because of some performance art that lasted like a minute, to what you were saying earlier, you got issues.
There's some serious issues actually. I feel like this should not rule your life. There's these ideas about someone's gender. Uh, it's just so flippant to me. Or it's just like the argument about I knew what I was gonna say too. These people who are so concerned about children in America, they're so concerned about children, the family unit. My thing is, I actually don't think they're that concerned, honestly. I like, I've been doing this podcast for a long time, 700 plus episodes. I've had people who work on freeing sex trafficking slaves. I've had those people on my podcast. No one talks about them, by the way. You know what they talk about? Stupid conspiracy theories about somebody in a basement and ping pong pizza in Washington, D.C., and they're eating children and they're trafficking them. Meanwhile, real sex trafficking is happening right underneath their nose. I don't see them partnering up with these organizations to like really, they care so much about children, but don't want to help children actually and, get good lunch for school, better reforming education, better health care. I don't hear that. What I hear is, oh, these stupid liberal people are eating adrenochrome and stuff or what, some made up science fiction shit. I was like,
Yeah.
just stupid stuff. You care so much.
Jewish space
Space
lasers.
lasers. I'm like, you don't
Yeah.
care about children, actually. I'm like, you really cared about children. Puts forth some legislation that changes the time that school starts for kids based off of what we know
Mm,
about the science of sleep and what changes for kids when they're in high school in terms of their
yeah.
chronotype and all that. You can help kids doing that. How about
Yeah.
get kids who literally wait till the next week to eat because they can't eat over the weekend because they have no food. All right. That's a handout? I was like,
Yeah.
come on. That's survival. I was like,
One of the points this speaker this past Sunday made from the pulpit was he talked about government agencies, and you could tell that this was a Fox News talking
Yeah.
point,
He
right?
just
You can
repeating
just tell.
points. Yeah.
Yeah.
No real thought.
And so he said, these government welfare programs are what enable fathers to abandon their families.
What?
And I was like, what the hell are you
What
talking
is that
about?
all about?
And I was like, man, you've mixed up the chicken and the egg. You know what I'm saying? It's like these welfare programs, they don't come into existence because a need isn't already there.
Right.
Nobody invents a welfare program for needs that are not already in existence.
Right.
They are a response to something. So if you want to talk about fathers abandoning their families, which is a perfectly legitimate conversation to
Sure.
have, but we're talking about, okay, well, I'm quoting the Apostle James a lot today,
You are,
but
man.
once again, the Apostle James, he says, he defines what true religion is, and it's the caring for the widows and orphans, or in other words, in a broader sense, those without husband or father.
Right.
So if you look at it that way, the welfare state, if that's what you want to call it, is true religion.
Yeah. And not jeans, by the way. Okay. That's a joke, people. Put that religion on your ass.
Yeah.
Does this look good? Like,
Oh man. So I asked this guy in the letter, I asked him, I said, well, I told him, I said, I guarantee that there are people in this congregation who are receiving some kind of government assistance.
for sure.
And I asked him, did your remarks help them or did it just shame them?
Mm. Yeah.
And that's what it is. It's like, we shouldn't be here to shame people,
No.
even when they've done wrong. That speaker, I'm not here talking about him to shame him either. I'm just saying that we have these kinds of problems you need to nip in the bud, because somebody else might see them doing that and see them get away with it. And then now they're like, oh, well, now I can talk about my politics
Sounds
up
familiar.
at the pulpit, Yeah. And so, the purpose of my email to him was to say, it's not to cancel him. It's not to say
Yeah.
I don't ever want to hear you speak again or anything like that. It's to
Yeah.
say, hey, next time, take a more nuanced approach and keep your personal politics away from the pulpit. That's all.
Yeah.
Quote some scripture to me, whatever. Don't weaponize it though.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. He was weaponizing a lot of things. He weaponized that proclamation to the family that I was talking about. He was weaponizing that. He was, and everything that he was kind of saying, he was just kind of weaponizing against people. And that's
because he heard
problem.
it somewhere. He heard it on a show,
Yeah.
just verbatim,
Yeah, and it was very obvious that, and I'm not saying that he was an unintelligent person or anything, but I'm saying it was very obvious that he wasn't a well-educated person in regards to these different topics that he was, talking about. And it's like, well, you need a better education before you stand up in front of a congregation and talk about it. That's just all there is to it. You got to do your due diligence. And if you're not going to do your due diligence, somebody else is going to do it for you. And that's going to be very humbling and humiliating.
Yeah. It's the whole thing, right? The people who know the least are the most fervent about stuff. Or it's just like if I meet someone and I always forget who I'm saying stuff to, but I was like, oh yeah, like I meet somebody and it's like, I immediately know they're playing a character or it's like overly cocky. I immediately am very turned off by that because I don't believe it. Other people may believe it and may get pulled into that tractor beam. The first thing I think is this is complete bullshit. That's literally the first thought. And I go, I just can't take this serious. Like,
normally
does this work?
That alpha male, right?
Yeah, it's the alpha.
Normally it's that kind of guy that you're just like, yeah, boy.
Yeah, what's going on?
Somebody's compensating,
Right.
So.
And there's maybe a kinder, gentler, more humble person in there. But for some reason, that person is being pushed way down to the bottom. and this other person is there. This is their main character energy. That's the young people say. This is a main character energy. And everything's big dick energy, main character energy. It's all
Yeah.
everybody's the center of the universe, right? It's everybody's always pushing this self-congratulatory look at me energy. And I find it the most abrasive with that type of energy, like overly cocky, I'm the man, it's like,
Yeah.
it's just like, hey, it's like maybe the worst thing for me to be around, honestly. I mean, people are idiots, that's fine. I mean, just like, if you're just, you're just being stupid and you're just like, hey man, I I don't understand these other things. But like, that's okay. I don't understand how to make something. Like, people have these great woodworking skills and they may tell you, oh, you're a real educated guy. Yeah, but who's smarter though, actually? Like, you can make something with your hands. I can't do anything like that.
Yeah.
Like, I respect you, but it's just like this cockiness. That I can't take, like, I don't mean to say they're not idiots. What I mean, idiot meaning just like, if someone's just like, listen, I admit that I just don't, there's not a lot going on here. It's like,
Yeah.
I just,
And they don't want there to be a lot going on.
Yeah, they don't want it like that. So I forgive me for that. I wasn't meaning it like that. My words weren't correct for me how I wanted to say it. That was
We're not trying to be mean spirited here. We're just trying to say that, there's what's happening is usually, folks like the ones you're talking about, they're getting caught up in a culture.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily nature; it's more nurture. They've nurtured this idea that being vulnerable is emasculating.
Yeah.
That being too smart or intelligent is once again emasculating. I mean, that's for nerds or something. But what happens is that we come to find out, and I'll say that I did not put a lot of importance on education when I was a young person.
Yeah.
I did not care to become an educated individual. But something really clicked once again when I was on my mission in Brazil. And I decided I did not want to be an ignorant person anymore. And I started to become an actual student, something that I had no history of being prior to 20 years old. I was not a student in any way, shape, or form. Maybe I was a student of the game of basketball. Boy, I knew the game of basketball inside and out. But other than that, I didn't care to be a scholar in any way. But yeah, something flipped, man. Something snapped in my head, and I just decided I was not going to be that guy anymore. And I took it upon myself, and it had nothing to do with the Bush administration in the 2000s. That brought me to become a scholar. I did not depend on the president of the United States to improve my life.
I see how you brought that back.
At first, I didn't even depend on school. Or me even attending school. When I first got back from my mission, one of the first things I did was go to the bookstore, and I just started buying books and reading books. I just became somebody who I was gonna be well read, and I just took it upon myself. And when I first got married, I actually didn't go to school for the first year or two, and my wife was finishing school, and she was an English major, so I would just read all of the books she was reading at school, everything. That's how I first read classics like Catcher in the Rye, because she was reading them in school, and man, things just opened up for me. Things just opened up, but the reason I'm bringing up this example is that the reason things opened up for me is because it was self-imposed. I decided what I was going to become.
That's right. And that's exactly right. And I think that's just kind of like this leasing your intelligence to other people, or just giving it away outright to other things. It's a dangerous slope, because at some point, more than likely, someone's going to confront you about these things you've given away. And then you're going to say, well, it's just because whatever said so.
Yeah.
or they just shut you down. It's just like, I just don't like that. I'm just like, you're robbing yourself of actual substantial information, intelligence. It's like, I'm never afraid to go to a place and talk to someone about anything. I always tell people, you can talk to me about anything, literally.
Yes,
I will not get
absolutely.
worked up about it. I got a little worked up today, guy. All right, I got a little worked up today. I'm a human being, but in general, I'm not going to get worked up about it. I'm going to chat with you about it. Even if you tell me something that's really cringy to me, I will not beat you up about it. I'll just ask you questions about it. Like,
Well, and you know that you can get worked up in a conversation with me because
yeah, yeah,
we're safe.
yeah.
You would not talk this way to the person
No,
who is maybe the person you were describing earlier. That's
yeah.
not how you
I just
would
don't
you
want to be
would
like nasty to people, like,
exactly.
not that I was being super I'm just pointing out factual information. I'm like,
Yeah, but
got
we
my voice got up.
and we're more careful with our words
Yeah,
when we're not sure if it's a
yeah,
safe environment to be able to
yeah,
express freely. And sometimes just so, sometimes we're just communicating in a shorthand.
yeah,
We're saying, oh, that person's an idiot. I don't actually mean they're an idiot, right?
yeah, of
I just
course.
mean on this particular topic in this specific way, the way they're acting is idiotic.
Yeah,
But I'm not
yeah.
trying to define them by this thing.
No,
And it's the
no.
same thing with this guy who gave this talk this past Sunday. I do not want to define this person by the terrible talk they gave. I do not want to sit here and say that's all there is to this person.
Right.
It's just not true.
Yeah,
It's just not true. This was a moment where they got lost in their own head and made a big blunder. And who of us has not got lost in our own heads
yeah,
and made a big blunder, spoke something we shouldn't have said, acted in a way we shouldn't have acted? I'm not going to define, I hope people won't define me by my worst moment, and I hope
yeah, of
to
course.
not define anybody else by theirs.
Yeah, totally, man. It's just that safety thing was interesting to me. Is like, if you can be a safe space for other people, they'll tell you anything. I mean,
Yes.
they'll literally tell you anything. That's literally my job. Like,
Yeah.
people tell me all types of stuff. Once they feel comfortable, I'm a safe space for them. The problem is that now we're at an inflection point in society where I can tell you, Simon, it's important to be a safe space to someone. If you tell the wrong person that, or a person that's not into that idea, all of a sudden, I know I'm going to say this is kids, all of a sudden they're thinking this is a weak person. This is a woke person because they want a safe space, like they start
Yeah.
belittling like these ideas. And my pushback is always like, so let me get this right. It's bad for me to make people feel comfortable to tell me things that they struggle to tell other people. That's what you're telling me. Like, it's like
And
when you rationally play
yeah.
this out, it makes no sense. Like, it's like, okay, I mean,
And if you didn't think God or Jesus were a safe space, would you ever pray?
right.
Would you even want to go to heaven?
Right.
you know,
It's like,
I think about that all the time with like the relationship with my own children. So my daughter Rainbow had a friend stay the night last night at around 10:30, 11:30, somewhere in that range. From their bedroom, Rainbow, I'm in the dining room, I'm just working on some stuff, and I hear Rainbow just call, hey, she's like, she calls me Paul.
yeah.
Says, hey, Pa. I'm like, what? She's like, we're in here creating drama. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, come in and we'll tell you. Anyway, I come in there and they just want to like share with me and laugh with me about this whole group Snapchat they've been
Yeah.
doing with their friends. And I actually participate in it, and I do just like a funny little video thing where
Yeah.
I tell them that it was me chatting with them the whole time,
Yeah.
and just playing a little prank,
Uh,
Um, but anyway, the I'm just so elated that my teenage daughter and her friend want me to come hang out with them and participate in this
yeah.
ridiculous Snapchatting and things like that. But that happens because I've built a relationship of trust with them. They know that I'm a safe space. They know that they can just giggle and laugh and do whatever and so on and so forth. And that might sound really small, but it's the goal of every parent to have this relationship with their children, that their children actually say, hey, come and hang out with me and my friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't ask for a better compliment than that from my children. They could praise me up and down all day, and I, nothing would say anything better than just inviting me to spend time with them.
Yeah.
So if that's not being a real man, then I don't want to be a real man.
You don't want to do it then. Yeah, exactly.
I want nothing to do with that kind of the masculinity where I'm not a safe space at all times for my children, and they are not excited for me to be around and to participate with them and their friends.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree, Simon. You know what, man? You always say great things. Although you did not say much again.
I did let you down.
Piece.
I did let you down.
Well, let me bring it back, okay?
Yeah.
Like, I was blown away by the lack of dialogue on that. I was like,
I mean, I'm sorry, like when I agree with something, what can I say? What can I say?
I'm thinking this is a very profound topic. This is you're
Man,
like, yeah,
I gotta up my game. I gotta up my game.
Thing's been in my repertoire for a while. What do you want me to say? Not new for me.
No, I guess it's because you already heard the podcast that I didn't, if I don't have
different. I thought it was different.
It was
like
really
I actually
good.
thought
it was really good.
It went out on a limb to me for traditional ideas about
they said many provocative things in there that I really appreciated, and he said many provocative things about scripture and about faith in general, and to a much more conservative mindset than it could have been very inflammatory. But if you go into it with an open mind and you actually are listening to what they're saying, and you're putting it in context, and you really stop and think about it, then the things that they were saying, and people should just go listen to the podcast, because it was a really great, amazing episode. What was that podcast called again? Bible for Normal
People. Yeah. It's such a great podcast. I mean, just to be clear, these guys have no clue who I am or Simon. Maybe they know Simon. I don't know.
No.
It's just an excellent podcast for people who just want to learn about the Bible in a really different way, not this kind of like cookie cutter way you kind of just learn about it growing up. It's not the more, your parents' version of it that maybe you got it from. It's really out there. And they have stuff like Pete ruins the Old Testament on there. There's like this thing. This guy comes, he's a big time religious scholar guy. He just breaks it down so succinctly about Genesis and Exodus and all that. And it's just in a way you've never heard before.
Because most of us have we've only listened in Sunday school.
That's right. And I like to listen differently. That's my thing.
And for those of you who are worried that, it's going to break your faith to listen to scholarship, because I hear that all the time from Christians,
for sure,
from members of my own church. They're like, oh, stay away from that, because that's, and it's like, well, okay, well, if your faith is so fragile that it can't withstand the truth, then maybe you're in the wrong faith.
That's right. That's a great one, for sure. It's so fragile, you can't let other ideas come in at all.
Yeah. And even if your faith is so fragile that it can't withstand the fault, if you think it's all false, whatever they're claiming. And from what I could tell, these guys are all believers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They're not,
sure.
it's not
an outside group. No.
Yeah. It's not deconstructionalists trying to tell everybody how terrible Christianity is.
No.
These are guys who are just taking a nuanced approach to it and are just saying, hey, it's not as simple as you thought.
Yeah. That's literally most of it. Even when they talk about, well, who wrote John and, pseudepigraphal authors and all these things, it's just eye-opening to think about it differently. My stance always been, for me, is that it strengthens my faith to have different points of view about it. And then let me think about it. Now, yeah, some of the things I have decided that I'm just not into. It's
Yeah.
just like that's part of the fear, is to start dropping stuff. Like, yeah, some of it I drop. It doesn't mean like, actually, I just think it makes it more clear. And I just, as we've said in this podcast many times, like, well, what's the basics here? You know, love God, love others as you would love yourself. Like, what's with the other stuff? I mean, like,
I, I can't remember if they were making this point on that podcast episode or if this is something that I was just thinking about recently or both. But there's not a single Christian on the face of the planet who isn't believing an extremely filtered version of Christianity.
yeah,
It doesn't matter who you are, and I'm putting myself in there
all of
too. I'm
us.
not
Yep,
I'm not saying I'm any exception to any of this. Every single one of us, we are putting our faith in an extremely filtered version of Christianity and of the Bible specifically.
for sure.
To try and take in the Bible as a whole is so much work.
Incredible.
It's so much work, and if you're not willing to put the work in, then really you're just cherry picking your belief.
Yeah,
But at a certain point, to what you were saying, even when you become really more educated and more familiar with everything that's in the Bible and Christianity in general, now you start cherry picking, but you do so in an educated way.
that's right.
You say, well, Paul said this, but Isaiah said this, and then Amos said this. So now you're just like, you're comparing, you're contrasting, and you're
Yeah,
deciding what actually makes sense in according to what those guys said, and now what Jesus said in Matthew or Mark or whatever. So the key here is that we're not cherry picking because that's what somebody told us when we were kids, and that's what
yeah,
we want to believe. We're cherry picking now because this is what makes sense according to the world we're in and according to our best understanding of who we think Jesus was or is, and what we think he was actually trying to teach, et cetera, et cetera.
right.
But that education is the big difference. It's the
That's right.
huge difference in
It's the
our
huge
ability to
difference.
cherry pick in a responsible way versus an irresponsible way.
Responsible way, and understanding the cultural, historical significance, and whether that lines up or not with different stories within the Bible for that.
Mm-hmm.
And what was
Yeah.
happening at this time. And does that actually make sense based off the time that that was in, the cultural, historical significance, the archaeological evidence, and what's being said in there? That doesn't seem unreasonable to think about. Again, reasonableness is just, that's a large thing. That's a big thing for me in life. Just be reasonable. Like,
Yeah.
that's why I don't vibe with extremism. It's never reasonable. It's always irrational.
No. Yeah. Yeah. It is because it's always it's doing that cherry picking,
Yeah.
but it's placing undue importance on the thing that's been cherry picked. What
Yeah.
you, I think, we're talking about is that you're not giving undue importance to something, but you're saying maybe this other thing isn't as important
Yeah.
anymore because maybe it was important in 750
Yeah.
AD
Yeah.
or BC is what I meant to say. Sorry.
Right.
But maybe things that were important in 750 BC are not as important today, or maybe they have nothing to do with us today. They're just, that's a lot of the Bible. It just has
It's
nothing to
so
do with us
true.
today.
Yeah. It literally has nothing to do. And I think that bothers uh different people who are holding on so tightly. It's like, well, because there's a fear of losing something that defines your whole existence completely, utterly,
Yeah.
completely. Everything you do is wrapped around the behavioral system of an idea or the dogma completely. And so people fear losing that because they don't know, well, what do I stand on then at that point? Well, I guess we'll just see. It's just like,
Jesus said to obey the law of Moses until all was fulfilled.
yeah,
People have been arguing over that interpretation for
yeah,
ever since. But to my mind, okay, well, he hasn't come again, so all's not fulfilled.
yeah,
All the prophecies that have been spoken in the Bible have not yet been fulfilled yet. So all is not fulfilled.
yeah.
Therefore, there's about 603 or so laws in in the law of Moses that most of us, and I did that math because that we have the famous 10 commandments.
Yeah. Well,
I'm saying the
yeah,
famous
the
ones.
famous ones, right?
Yeah,
And then
that
all that
that
other stuff, it's
yeah,
like,
that most people think they subscribe to.
they think they
So let's just say that they're all obeying those 10, but now there's 603 others
yeah,
that you're completely ignoring.
yeah,
so
pretty much,
so
yeah,
everybody's cherry picking.
all the
Everybody's
time.
cherry picking.
Yeah. And now it seems like it's just a lot of cherry picking fear. Which one of these things will create the most fear for the people, so that, if you don't do this, it's just like it's like a punitive faith. It's like, let me just make you feel like you're in big trouble, man. You know what?
Yeah.
You're in huge trouble if you
Believe
don't
or
do,
else.
or else,
Yeah.
like that's why it's
We
like,
have ways of making you believe.
yeah, we have ways. Dr. Jones. I'm just not into the fear. I'm like, it's like when somebody, like, that's when I hear these speeches sometimes and stuff, and it's like, America's a terrible place. It's falling apart. I'm like, my America's pretty good. I don't know what you're talking about, man. It's
Yeah, we've had
like,
some new infrastructure bills and
I don't
everything,
know, man.
new tech, bills and things like that. Things seem to be
I don't know, man.
keep things by and large, I'm not saying in every way, but
No,
by and large, they keep getting better.
right. I just like, and this inevitability is kind of like, I always liked the character Thanos in the Avengers.
Yeah.
He was like a philosophical villain. That was his
Mhm.
thing. Like, he's gonna, before he crushes you, he's gonna drop some knowledge on you. He's gonna
Yeah.
tell you some. He's gonna speak in some parables and stuff. He's doing riddles and all this stuff. He's profound. He's like, you can run from it, hide from it. It all comes just the same.
Yeah.
I love that line so
Yeah.
much. He's like, you can make this excuse, that excuse. I'm coming. I'm like, no matter
Yeah.
what you do, I will be here. Like,
Inevitable.
it's I
Isn't
am,
that the word
and
he
he goes,
used?
I am inevitable.
Yeah.
Like, and whatever, he had ego, just like a lot of powerful people do. But it was just basically like, I always liked a lot of his points. He was like, listen, all this stuff you guys are talking about, this side, that side, it's coming. No matter what, like,
Well, that's what makes a villain, intriguing is
yeah,
when you can agree with them at least a little bit.